It's just to get your clinical experience going. So I'll start off with presenting a few cases, just like Jayesh did, but I'm going to ask you what you think about it. I'm going to take you through a lot of theoretical, semi-theoretical stuff, as well as how to select good medications, what are the guidelines, and also take you through a little bit advanced disease, if you see advanced disease in patients and what do you do. So hopefully this should be an engaging 15-20 minutes. I might overshoot the time, Alok. So coming to the first case, and Sujata was so kind to stand up. Sujata, you can stand up. 25-year-old software professional, severe ocular discomfort, unable to work well. Shermer's is 14, examination is normal. What do you think, Sujata? Sujata, you disappeared? Okay, she's on the phone. Anyone can take this. Deepshika, 25-year-old typical software professional, and he has all the symptoms possible. He cannot work, he just... So, yeah, so no, the diagnosis, you can label it whatever you like. So is this dry eye or not? Yeah, we call it dry, pretty much dry eye because it's functionally affecting the patient. Deepshika, what do you think? How will you treat this patient? Second case, now Sujata, we finished with your phone call. So during my instruction course, second case is a 21-year-old lady. She underwent LASIK 1 month ago and she complains of blurring of vision. She gets better with drops, that is, she's already on lubricants. So is this dry eye or not, and how will you treat this patient? Post-LASIK. She is post-LASIK, a month later, yeah. The third case becomes a little more difficult. She's a 64-year-old lady with severe itching sensation, decreased vision. She's been consulting various ophthalmologists. She's on treatment primarily for blepharitis in most of the papers that she has for the past 4 years, but she's not better. Her Shermer's is 4. It's not 0, but it's not normal either. And what this diagram shows is multiple punctate erosions on her corneas in both eyes. When you just look at without the stain and just look at the diffuse anterior segment photograph, she looks near normal. The lids look kind of okay, but the cornea does show those erosions. But when you put fluorescein stain as well as rose Bengal stain, you can see that areas mostly in the cornea stained, conjunctiva doesn't stain much. So I'm not going to ask anybody about this case, otherwise what will I do in this talk, right? The fourth case, we'll come back to case 3 and 4 later. Fourth case is a 45-year-old lady. She also has blurred vision, right eye more than left eye. And she just says since 10 days, she was absolutely fine before that. She doesn't complain of dry eye. But when you examine her, you see that, okay, I forgot to upload the video. You see that she has this area where the epithelium is just about breaking down in the center. Looks very clean, doesn't look like it's an infection. And the entire cornea looks a lustreless. I've put rose Bengal and you see that there's a diffuse staining of the conjunctiva. So case 4, there's something happening here. Patient doesn't really have symptoms but has signs which suggest an advanced or a grave disease. Case 5, a little similar to what Jayesh had shown you, is a patient who's 55 years old. He has symptoms in several years, he's just living with it. He's on treatment with several medications, mainly lubricants. And now that his vision is less, he's been referred to us for cataract surgery. You know straight off that his Shermer's is going to be very, very low. It is 0. And his tear breakup time is also 0. And then this cornea is just studded and staining because the surface is so irregular. So we'll come back again to how we're going to manage this case medically. So this grading system is very useful. It's not that every time we're going to look at it and score the patient and put them in a category. But as Jayesh explained to us, that if you see a lot of patients with dry eye in your clinic, it might even be useful to put it up there on the wall for you, because when the patient comes and gives you a little brief kind of overview on where the patient sits. A patient who's a computer vision syndrome patient or a post-LASIK temporary dry eye kind of patient will complain. So in terms of discomfort, they'll be high up on the discomfort. But in terms of signs, they'll be low down on the signs. What about the gravity? So in terms of the long-term follow-up, they're going to get better, you know that. So it's not pathological. Whereas on the other hand, you might have a patient who's a known patient of rheumatoid arthritis, or you just figured out that she's a rheumatoid arthritis, may come to us for the first time. Although the most common ocular manifestation of RA is not uveitis or scleritis, but it is dry eye. But this is very often missed. Even the rheumatologists sometimes don't send the patients to us. So I think that those patients may not complain bitterly, but then the gravity is much more because they're going to get worse. The SPKs will become corneal melts and so on. So again, the treatment, borrowing from that same discussion, is based on the severity. And as Deepshika so kindly mentioned, that you just educate that kind of patient who's at level 1 about dietary modifications if required, about offending whatever is there in their environment or medications they're using. And the patients can have tear substitutes, gels, ointment, eyelid therapy, and one more. The patient also will benefit with some counseling. So we in fact have clinical psychologists with us because some of these patients, it's a perception. So it's a psychosomatic manifestation. So also, I'm sure Jayesh at least will agree that they need some amount of counseling. The level 2 patients, these are the patients who have mild to moderate disease, and they definitely have signs as well. And generally, a lot of patients will have lid problems in this particular group. This could well be that LASIK patient who doesn't improve after 3-4 months even. The patient still continues to have symptoms. So what do you think? Maybe we missed a pre-existing dry eye, or we've induced a little bit more severe grade of dry eye for this post-LASIK patient. That patient will do better with punctal plugs and so on. For the level 3 patient, that's a patient we discussed earlier on. When I say contact lens, I mean scleral contact lens. So this patient is a patient who may have SJS, who may be more advanced with dry eye, so would need a certain medication like, or maybe even autologous serum or scleral contact lens, permanent punctal occlusion. And for the very severe cases, in addition to all that we'll be doing here, the patient would need systemic immunosuppressants or even steroids and other immunosuppressive agents, and lid surgery, whether it's you do Botox or Dasorafis, and there have also been descriptions of salivary gland transplantation, but we can also do an AMT if there is a bad epithelial defect going on over there. So this is looking at it in another way. The treatment options we have are, you can supplement the tears, which you do for almost all categories. You can help in retaining the tears, that is by doing punctal occlusion, or the patient wears this moist chamber spectacles or scleral contact lenses. You can stimulate the tears. So there are various medications called secretagogues, which will stimulate the tears. You can add biological substitutes instead of just tear substitutes. So the biological substitutes mainly includes autologous serum, and there's even a component of serum now that some proponents have been using. And also you have salivary gland autotransplantation. I don't know if I've never seen anybody do this, but it has been described. There are many papers on it. Additionally, you have cyclosporin, steroids, and tetracyclines listed as anti-inflammatory therapy. Omega-3 fatty acids have been pushed by the market, but if you look at all the research papers, there is some truth in the story that they have some beneficial effect, but at a pretty high dose, actually, and it's a little expensive for the average patient that we have. And environmental strategies. As I mentioned earlier, there are too many choices on these tear substitutes, and every month you have somebody coming and telling you about a new one. So what is an ideal lubricant? It should be, of course, inexpensive for the patient. It should be easy to use. That is, a single bottle should be able to dispense multiple doses rather than having to open one unim per 2-3 doses. So that for the patient's point of view, it's not good. So it should have a preservative, it should not be there, or should be something fleeting and certainly not toxic. And it should not be irritant to the eye. So you have patients using what you think is excellent, but the patients don't like it. So they say it's irritating. And what you think is a very cheap and expensive molecule, the patient is actually quite happy with it. So it's sometimes paradoxical. And of course, when the patient uses that medication, on the bottle it says use it for 1 month, but that medication can last for 3 months. So what do you do about the sterility issue? So you should have something that is going to retain its sterility. But the available lubricants are usually expensive. The bottle depends on the packaging, whether it's easy to use or not easy to use. So the dispenser kind of bottle which is being marketed, not all patients are happy with it because they're not very comfortable in dispensing it. The preservatives can range from toxic ones to no preservatives also. And as I mentioned earlier, there is a paradoxical irritation. And also that these substitutes can get contaminated. You've had reports where there's Pseudomonas isolated, especially from the bottles. And the shelf life is variable. So when I was asking somebody that what kind of molecule would you select, it's good to select only 2 or 3 drugs to work with. Decide right away when you're starting off. You can experiment with all the medications available. When I say experiment, for example, I experiment on my eyes with each and every medication that the pharmacist that they give us. Just put in the eye and see how you feel. That gives you a basic kind of approach. And then you use it for patients, use the same couple of medications for patients so that you build up on clinical experience. Don't change it. So so select one which is a thin or less viscous medication for patients who have simpler disease, and they are able to instill it 4 to 6 times a day. For patients who have severe disease or moderate disease with low Schirmers, select one which stays in the eye for a longer time. That can be a gel, that can be a compound which has, for example, the hyperosmotic tear supplements, which are also supposed to be epithelio-friendly or help the epithelium heal. So you can select a combination of a CMC along with some kind of gel. You can select a combination of polyvinyl alcohol preparation, which is found, it's quite commonly available, along with some kind of gel. So use gel at bedtime or gel 3 times a day, and this one 4 times a day. So it doesn't matter for an average kind of disease, but it really matters if the patient has any of the severe diseases, like the patient has rheumatoid arthritis, patient has, like you mentioned, graft versus host disease, or any of those diseases. It really matters what molecule you select. And anything that has a preservative is going to be very disastrous for the patient. So I mentioned earlier that there are several plugs. I use them fairly often. They're a little expensive. They cost 3,000-4,000 rupees. And the other problem is that they don't stay very long. They just come off. So the way to use them is first use lubricants for the patients, use anti-inflammatory medication for the patient. Once the patient is stabilized, then after that you use a plug. Plug should not be the first thing that you use for the patient, because theoretically you don't want to have tears which have inflammatory cytokines in them being retained in the eye. So you want to get rid of the inflammatory cytokines by using steroids or something like that, or estasis or cyclosporin, and then go ahead and use the plug. So the various types, temporary, permanent. You can also simply do punctal occlusion, which works very well. We have patients from low socioeconomic, works in SJS patients also. You can use the stitch, the suture that was taught to us earlier. The commonest complication we must remember is migration. So if a patient who you have history of using a plug comes back to you with orbital cellulitis, very puffy over here, don't assume, I did the mistake, don't assume that it's related to the dry eye. It's actually that plug that has migrated in the preceptal space inferiorly, and it can even lead to a bad abscess over there requiring drainage. And that apparently is the commonest complication. I learned it the hard way. In secretagogues, I don't have much experience except with oral pilocarpine. I use that fairly frequently because we see a spectrum of patients who have bad disease. And the rheumatologists recommend 10 milligram a day, 1 to 2 times, but usually we start off with 5 milligrams a day and then step it up. So what you should tell the patient is buy 1 or 2 strips, that is buy about 20 tablets. It's quite cheap, very cheap. And they use it once or twice a day. What happens is that they get a lot of sweating on their palms and sweating everywhere. And some people they get dehydrated. So they feel a little uncomfortable because of the slight dehydration. So if they feel, then you tell them discontinue. Some patients feel fine, and you just select what dose is good, maybe 5 mg, and you can use that for these patients. And it really helps. Autologous serum, the biggest problem is the cold chain maintenance. So some of our patients, at least in our institute, they don't have a refrigerator. There's no access to it. So it's useless to give them autologous serum. You're just giving them a culture medium for bacteria. So you can only give it to those patients where they can maintain the cold chain very well. So everyone knows treatment of blepharitis is very important. Cannot overemphasize. That has to be there. Even if you can't visibly see blepharitis, assume it's there and give them treatment, because there's simple things like doxycycline, ointment on the lid margin, which helps a lot for these patients. So something about other methods, sometimes we forget, I'm sure you don't forget, but sometimes we forget simple things like spectacles, protective spectacles. Very hard to find these moisture chamber spectacles. They're not really available by most of the manufacturers. I've not found a place in India that sells them. But what you get instead is 2 things that I've tried out. One is that the swimmer's goggles, that works very well, and it's available at all sports shops. And the second is the goggles that are used by people who play racquetball. And I came to know because my husband plays racquetball for years, and then those goggles are wraparound. They're just perfect for patients with dry eye, and they're clear. So this wraparound goggles are what we stock in our pharmacy. They're a little expensive, not very cheap, but they last for a long time because it's shatterproof. So coming back to our cases, the first case, everybody was on target, was very sure what to do. So this patient, I started off with artificial tears 4 to 6 times a day, explained a lot, and then said warm compresses, etc., and asked if you're stressed out, blah, blah. So the patient actually got better. So this was level 1 treatment. The second case, LASIK patient, which I had done. I said, underwent LASIK. Actually, I did LASIK for this patient. And as usual, if it's done with us, then we underemphasize the complications, right? But then this patient, luckily for me, got better with using medical therapy. But sometimes these patients cannot get better. So the same case, theoretically, do Schirmer's and tear breakup time, as somebody mentioned. If it's normal, you treat as case 1, as a computer vision syndrome patient. But if it's decreased, you need to add cyclosporin, go on to preservative-free tears and gel, you might want to put punctal plugs, and then I need to think, did I miss out a dry eye like a contact lens wearer, therefore the Shermer's was not good enough at the time when I did LASIK surgery? So these are the questions I would ask myself and just hope for the patient to get better. Sometimes it takes 6 months, even a year after LASIK. Case 3, which I took you through, the crux of the clinical findings was here. So Jayesh would not miss this. So any takers on the diagnosis? If not, I'll search for my ex-fellows in Harrison.
O. Starts with O.
Starts with O, yeah. No, it's not Steven Johnson's because the lids were good. If you can see that the lid margin, there's no keratinization. So it's a 64-year-old lady, a chronic irritable eye. So exactly, yeah. So this patient has ocular cicatricial pemphigoid. In fact, not so sure about the quality of the pictures, but you can see that here there is shortening of the fornices, there is some scarring going up here, and also in the other eye, you can see this here. So this is the clinical finding that was missed. Sometimes it's very subtle, and it's not necessarily that the whole eye is congested. So this is a very important differential diagnosis, should not be missed. It may be more common than we think it is, because we don't look for it. And so this patient had OCP. We also did a conjunctival biopsy just to confirm, but we were already very sure. It didn't matter what the result would be. We were going to start her on topical steroids, oral immunosuppressants, and then tears as additional therapy, and this patient stabilized after that. The fourth case, the Shermer's is 0. The patient has dry mouth and joint aches. So the diagnosis for the eye is keratoconjunctivitis sicca, but the diagnosis systemically is secondary Sjogren's syndrome. So what do you do for this lady? The investigation that I do is order an RA, ANA, or CRP or ESR to give us an idea of how severely active is the systemic disease. SS1 and SS2 antibodies, very often they're negative. Less than 40% of the times you actually get them positive. So, but RA very often is positive. Even if RA is negative, the diagnosis is still secondary Sjogren's because she has dry mouth and joint pains as well. So treat her the same. So I would put her on oral steroids and then work her up and then put her straight away on oral methotrexate because she needs these medications for a long time. For the eye, very judiciously use topical steroids and preservative drops. I would use oral pilocarpine and omega fatty acids if she can afford all this. The last case, I think, so this patient is a known case of rheumatoid arthritis. He was just very happy with his eye, off and on systemic treatment till his vision went down. And he came for cataract surgery, but then we can't just go ahead and do cataract surgery. You have to do almost similar to the previous patient, and you have to improve the ocular surface like anything before you can even attempt to touch the eye. So those are your strategies. So thank you very much.